Mid-engine Ferrari values continued to increase during the winter and hereby started to deviate from the rest of the market. Now we all know that car prices are extortionate at the moment. Sports cars and basically all cars that loosely classify as modern classics went up in price. It's then also no surprise that many people call this market a bubble. Yet, price forecasts for this year range from no change at all to a market collapse where prices could decrease by 30%. In reality though, the prices have been fairly stable in the beginning of 2022. We saw that price trends started to flatten and that some markets are forming a top formation as prices decreased. However, the Italians are creating their own path as mid-engine Ferrari prices continue to increase. They don't seem to be influenced by the rest of the market or by the fact that we're coming out of a winter period. Let's see what happened to F355, 360, F430, 458, 488, F8 and SF90 prices. But that's not all. We will also for the first time have a look at the time it takes to sell these cars and how it developed during the pandemic. Yet, let's first have a look at the current state of the market. Over here we have the US market of March with the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. And as you would expect, the market is small with only 561 clean titles for sale. And all of these cars are hardly driven. The median mileage is 7,300 miles. Now when we look at the prices, we can obviously see large differences between the models, but also that we can identify a few price groups. On the left we have the older models such as the F355, 360 and F430. These cars cost between $100,000 and $150,000 for a basic example, whereas manuals and the special editions can go for well over $200,000. The second price group consists out of the 458 and 488 and sits at a much higher price level. Prices for these cars range between $200,000 and $400,000, but the special versions can go up to $1 million. But then you're looking at the Apertas and the Pistas. It's fascinating though to see how close the 458 and 488 are in terms of price point. You can see that there's hardly any difference between a late 458 and an old 488. And these similarities are not limited to the prices. Also in other metrics such as the depreciation per 1,000 miles driven and the price development over time we can see this. Moving on then, we have the third price group, which consists only out of the F8. You can see that it's a step up from the 488 as prices start at $400,000 but go up to $600,000. Naturally, this is still a lot cheaper than the SF90 as these start at $800,000 but can easily go over $1 million when you load them up. So we're up to date on today's market and that means that it's time to have a look at the value development over time. So that's what we will do now and we will do this per price group. And where relevant, we will also look a little bit deeper into each price group by splitting the market. We'll also make some comparisons to the 911 Turbo market. But why the Turbo market? It's maybe not a direct competitor to the Ferraris, but it's for sure a car that has strong residuals and covers many model years. But before we do all of that, I would like to get your attention for today's video sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Exclusive Auctions, and if you haven't heard about them yet, you should check them out. Exclusive Auctions is a new full-service online auction platform for buying and selling sports cars, exotic cars, race cars and specialty vehicles. And they have some really great features. For example, with their gold listing package and buyer's premium sales success fee, there are zero seller fees to sell your vehicle. They also offer full service after sales support with everything from pre-purchase inspections and transport services to escrow services ensuring that both buyer and seller hold up to their end of the bargain. Click on the link below or go to exclusiveauctions.com and register to bid or sell your car today. But now then, let's have a look at the value development over time and we start with the first price group. Over here we have the median price development for the F430, 360 and F355 and this excludes the Challenge Stradales and the Scuderias but includes the manual and the automatics. We can see that prices still increased during the last 3 months, but that the increase is smaller than in the preceding period. Prices went up with 1.3% in the F430 market, 3.5% in the 360 market, but this is mainly pushed by the manuals and 8.5% in the F355 market. Yet, none of these price changes are statistically confirmed, and this means that they could be the result of chance. A possible explanation for this can be the strong price increase that we saw in the previous period. The 360 market just went up with 18% between May and December and the F430 market with 22% between February and December. Nevertheless, the most recent price increases what we see here are the lowest when compared to other Ferrari models, but we need to be careful with this conclusion. In both the F430 and 360 market, we can namely see that the price variation increased as the shaded area got wider. In the 360 market, we can for example see that the market bottom remained fairly stable, while the top of the market increased. And in practical terms, this might imply a winner takes it all scenario, where the price trend for the best examples will separate itself from the rest of the market. But that's pure speculation at this point. However, compared to the 997 turbo market, the F430 and 360 market still look very strong. If I add the turbo to the graph, you can see that prices came down by 3.6%. Also, the decrease in the turbo market is not statistically confirmed, but you can see that the Ferrari and the Porsche market look like they will move in a different direction. One is on the edge of having a solid increase, while the other one is on the edge of displaying a significant decrease. So what about the special models like the Challenge Stradales and the Scuderias? Well, unfortunately, the markets are so small that it doesn't make any sense to look at the price trends. They're simply unreliable. One or two cars with a high mileage can have a significant influence on the price trend. So let's conclude on the first price segment, the one containing the F355, 360 and F430. We can say that the price trend weakened a bit from before, but that the long-term upward trajectory is still intact. In a market where we can see an increasing number of stabilizing or topping price trends, that's a decent result if you ask me. However, it falls short to what's happening in the 458 and the 488 market. Over here we have the second price group, and you can see that both cars continued their upward trend without hesitation. 488 values increased with 3.5% and 458 values even with 4.2%. Both of these increases are then also statistically confirmed. But now you might wonder, why are these price increases statistically confirmed but not the one that we saw in the previous price group? That's a good question. 360 values, for example, went up with 3.6%, whereas we just saw that it's 3.5% in the 488 market. The reason that one price increase is statistically confirmed and the other one not lays in the way that the prices changed. In the 458 and 488 market, it is the full market that shifted up, and this is not the case in the 360 market. And in the cases that all cars went up in value compared to only a few of them, it's of course much more likely that we are looking at a real market change and not at a change that happened by coincidence. And this market strength is further highlighted when we compare the values to the one for the 991 and 992 turbo. If I add the 992 in red and the 991 in green, we can see that these markets show a more flat development. Both still increased with a bit less than 2%, but only the 992 increase is statistically confirmed. So the increase in the 991 market can be the result of chance. Again, we're not looking at a difference of night and day, but it's clear from the graph that the Ferrari price trend looks much stronger than the one of the Porsche. It's by the way interesting to mention that supply developments are surprisingly similar in all markets. All markets, with exception of the 992 turbo, saw a big decrease between the beginning of 2020 and the summer of 2021. Supply levels then increased and remained stable. None of the cars, again with exception of the 992, reached supply levels from before the pandemic. And with that, let's summarize what we just saw. We saw that 458 and 488 prices continued their uptrend like business as usual. Both markets saw a confirmed price increase, and this is not something that is self-evident. It also shows that the 488 is still very popular and that buyers don't seem to be bothered by the turbocharged engine. Perhaps this aversion to the turbo only exists on social media and not so much among the actual buyers. So let's have a look at the last two models now, the F8 and the SF90, but we will do that rather quickly. But before we do all of that, I would like to ask you to smash that like button down below if you enjoyed this video. Clicking on that button will help to support the channel, as YouTube will recommend this video to other people who might find it interesting. But let's continue with the value developments over time, and we start with the F8. I only have the price trend for the last 3 months, but we can see that prices increased with 4.6%, and also that this price increase is statistically confirmed. We are looking then also at a complete market shift. Hence, it applies to both the coupes and the convertibles. Continuing then with the SF90, we can see that prices came down by 5%, but this trend is difficult to trust. In December of last year there were only 5 cars for sale, and now there are 33 cars for sale. Therefore, it's fair to conclude that the data point of December doesn't give an accurate representation of the market. Alright, we look now at a lot of data, and I think that this data shows that the mid-engine Ferrari market is still exceptionally strong. So let's wrap things up now and conclude. Over here we can see all the price trends excluding the one for the SF90. We saw that prices continue to increase in all markets, but that especially the price trends of the 458 and 488 are very strong. There's no indication in this price trend that the price trend will flatten anytime soon. Prices in the F355, 360 and F430 market also increased, but the increase is not statistically confirmed. It's not the full market that shifted up, and potentially this can be caused by the large increase that we saw earlier. The market might be cooling off. Nevertheless, all of these price trends, so also the one for the cheaper models, are strong, especially when compared to the rest of the market and, for example, to the one of the 911 Turbo. The turbo market and the car market in general saw some price stabilizations, but this does not, or at least not to the same extent, apply to the mid-engine Ferrari market. However, the big question is of course if this price frenzy will continue. There's no definite answer to this, but the following graph might help us to get a sense of direction. Over here we have the average days it takes to sell a car split by the different models. This analysis is based on data from AutoTempest. AutoTempest conveniently pools listings from a bunch of different websites into one place so that you can browse through all of them. Check out the links in the video description to find the Ferraris for sale right now. So how should we interpret this graph? Well, the lines show the average time it took to sell a car at that given date. For example, the 360s that were sold in 2021 Q4 were for sale for an average of 45 days. Unfortunately, this is not the actual time the car was for sale, as this requires information from the dealer. Rather, it's based on the number of days that the car was advertised on AutoTempest. Now when we look at the results, we can see that they line up quite well with what one could expect. We can see that all lines are trending down since the start of the pandemic, hereby signaling that the cars were selling faster. However, during the summer of 2021 things started to stabilize slightly. We can see, for example, small increases in the 360 and 458 market. And this development matches quite nicely with what we could see in the overall car market. It's only since the summer of 2021 that we could see the first tentative signs of flattening price trends. Now if we look then at the most recent period, we can see a flat development. And in essence this means that supply and demand are more or less balanced, whereas previously demand was larger than supply. So if we relate this back to the price developments, we can say that it's questionable to assume that prices will continue to increase at the same pace. After all, supply and demand appear to be in balance now. Therefore, I wouldn't be surprised to see a stabilization in Ferrari prices, just as we have seen in the rest of the market. And with that we arrived at the end of this video. Now if you enjoyed this data-driven way of analyzing car values but would have liked to see the analysis for a different car, let me know down below in the comment section for which car you would like to see an analysis. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. Don't forget then to subscribe and to click on the notification bell so you get notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.